This is Digaris Essays, that is 2-3 page opinion pieces on topics such as species dominance, the global state, politics, femtotech, religion, society and education, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo Digaris. This is essay number 28, entitled Peakers and Sages, Oil and Water, by Prof. Dr. Hugo Digaris. Email profhugodigaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodigaris.wordpress.com. Abstract. Peakers, that is, people of average ability who lie in the peak of the IQ or ability bell curve, and sages, that is, intellectuals, people of high IQ, professors and researchers, are like oil and water. They don't mix. This essay spells this out and aims to teach the peakers that they should simply accept their inferiority relative to the sages as an unavoidable fact of nature. The IQ and knowledge gap between sages and peakers is so vast that the two communities have nothing in common and have nothing to do with each other. They are like oil and water. They don't mix. Sages see peakers as the three I's: ignorant, ignorable, idiots. And peakers see sages as antisocial elitists. Sages have sage minds, and they're hungry to use them. They want to understand things and spend most of their time thinking and learning. They bury themselves in books and inquiry. Over a lifetime, they know a ton of stuff and have opinions on a huge range of topics. They are sages. Peakers, on the other hand, don't even read books. They watch movie videos all the time, or mainstream media. They are typically a massive 50 IQ points dumber than sages, so don't do much thinking, as judged by sages. Over a lifetime, their knowledge level is negligible compared to sages, and hence their opinions are very poorly fact-based, and hence considered worthless by the sages. To protect themselves from the stupid ignorance of peakers, sages avoid them like the plague by avoiding groups, which, given the realities of the bell curve, consist mostly of peakers, which is where the very definition of the word came from. All sages have had the experience of feeling that they're wasting their time on some silly peaker who can't even express his simple thoughts, and tend to avoid being confronted by such people. I've been doing that for decades. I call it boredom protection. When I'm in the park studying pure math or math physics, and some Chinese peasant comes up to me, curious to know what I'm reading, I just say to him, nearly always a him, Budong, which means I don't understand, I don't speak your language, and they go away, so that I'm saved 10 minutes of wasted time. Oddly, once in my life, I've had the same experience occur to me, which I found most amusing. This was in Silicon Valley, near Stanford University, one of the best in the world. The guy I spoke to was reading some heavy math, so I opened up with, "Are you a math prof?" No reply. I looked at him in the eye. He grimaced a little and kept silent. I got the message, chuckled a little, since this was the first time such a thing had happened to me. So I said to him, more or less, "Let me guess, you're a prof at Stanford in pure math or math physics. You're so much brighter than virtually anyone you ever come across, except for colleagues on campus, that you avoid the ignorant masses like the plague. They only waste your time and try your patience. I fully understand. I use the same strategy myself. I don't expect you to reply." End quote. He humphed a little and with a slight smile and walked off. If you're a peaker reading this, which is unlikely, you may be thinking of me and the Stanford prof as, quote, "What an arrogant asshole, what a self-superior jerk," end quote. The implicit assumption behind this attitude is that peakers expect sages to behave like them, to be civil and accommodating to them, the way other peakers are. 2/3 of the populations are peakers, so peaker mutual civility is so commonplace it becomes unconscious to peakers, and they expect it from everyone. But sages are not peakers. Peakers are given the three fingers by sages. For good reason. Peakers truly are ignorant, ignorable idiots. Ignorant, ignorable idiots. As seen by sages, and for self-protection, sages avoid peakers, both conversationally and physically. Peakers need to learn this and to accept it. Expect it. Peakers may not like this reality, but it is a reality that will not go away. It's inevitable given the fact of life of the IQ bell curve. Peakers need to make the analogy of how they feel towards real morons, for example, street sweepers or garbage collectors, and then ask themselves, isn't it reasonable to expect that sages are to me as I am to morons? One of my motives in writing this essay is to express my impatience with New World anti-intellectualism. It's strong in colonies for the obvious reason that the intellectual upper class of the colonizing power chose not to migrate. I've lived in 2 English-speaking British colonies, my first and my 6th countries, Australia and the US. I felt ill at ease and culturally unsupported in both, and rejected both by voting with my feet to large population old world cultures where I did feel supported, since their large old world populations produced enough sages to be self-supporting. One of the attitudes of the large population European cultures, Germany, Britain, France, Italy, I really liked when I was living in some of them, was that when it came time for an intellectual discussion, the argument came first, and not the ego of the person you were discussing with. This attitude was so different from the middle-class attitude of the colonies. I remember I effectively said goodbye to one of my American girlfriends with the following dialogue. I was expressing my frustration with certain aspects of American culture to her, and suddenly she blurted back, "But I'm American." I replied, "So what? The argument remains valid." "But I'm American." I said goodbye and never saw her again. The main point of this essay is to teach peakers that they should expect to be snubbed by sages. If a sage pretends to be interested in the peaker's intelligence or knowledge level, then that is all that it is, that is, pretense. Very quickly the sage will bow out of the conversation and walk off. Peakers should expect this. It's unrealistic not to do so. Unfortunately, in the colonies, the sages do not have the European upper-class tradition of slapping down middle-class mindlessness. In Europe, especially in the Big Four, the middle class is actually afraid of the intellectual upper class. Europe has government TV, so it's possible for sages in Europe to attack the ignorant stupidities of the middle classes. The US does not have government TV, to any extent. So by default, its mainstream media is commercial, and hence inevitably aimed at the intellectual level of the peakers, since they are the numerical majority. They are the ad mass. The sages are ignored on US mainstream media, so they don't get the opportunity to slap down US middle-class mindlessness, which to European sages is breathtaking. For example, 70% of Americans are still religious, believing in 2,000-year-old superstitions such as life after death, sons of gods, resurrections, virgin births, miracles, angels, etc. 40% of Americans believe the earth is less than 10,000 years old. 3 exclamation marks. Now that we have the internet, European sages, at least the English-speaking ones, are starting to have a strong effect on American middle-class mindlessness. The most obvious example that comes to my mind is Richard Dawkins, who almost single-handedly has caused a third of the US population to come out as atheists. Europe is decades, not years, ahead of the US in terms of the proportion of the West European population who look on religions as human-invented fictions, especially the UK, Scandinavia, etc. Japan, too, is one of the most atheistic countries in the world. I remember my Japanese girlfriend saying to me when visiting the Salt Lake City Mormon temple that she thought the Mormon beliefs were a mental disease. I just laughed. So, I'm hoping I'm helping New World sages to assert themselves the way the Old World sages do unconsciously. If an Old World sage hears some middle-class BS, bullshit, he is much more likely to browbeat the middle-class idiot than will a New World sage. A result of this is that New World sages are often ridiculed and belittled by New World peakers. Old World sages wouldn't tolerate this for an instant. They would lash out and mercilessly browbeat the middle-class idiot, putting him in his inferior IQ and knowledge place. Old world middle-class members expect this, since they get it all the time in the government-controlled media. So, New World sages, you should learn from your Old World colleagues. Learn to stand up for yourself and lash out when you hear sagest remarks or labels like egghead, geek, nerd, etc. Retaliate with labels like peaker, sub. In brackets, subs are dumber than peakers, that is, in the bottom sixth of the population, in brackets, and assert your superiority. Peakers who look down on sages are living in a fairyland. They are too dumb and ignorant to realise their genetically inferior position. It's your role as a New World sage to put them in their place with a sharp retort which will make them sit up and take notice. Hey, this geek fights back. Better not talk to him next time, or he might really bruise my ego. That's it. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name Hugo de Garis.